Ahoy folks, and welcome back to Broadside Gaming with me, Zug. So we're carrying on with our updated build for Darktide, and we are carrying on with the Psyker. So, today, we have a Rift Haven build for you. Lots and lots of flamethrowers. I'm a simple man, I like my staves sturdy and my heretics on fire. Let's have a look at the gear. So, first of all, we're carrying on using the Blaze Force Sword, and the spread of stats, again, mobilities are dump. I just don't like mobility. It's just, out of everything else, it's the lowest one to consider. I know people will disagree with me on this, but that's just my view of it. If you don't like that, buff mobility, take down warp resistance. Lovely, simple solution. Next up, we're going for the perks. We're going for Carapace and Maniac on it. And with the blessings, we're going for Uncanny Strike and Deflector. Uncanny Strike is where we're going to be getting all our damage from, and Deflector is going to be a massive, massive defensive boost for us. I do love the Demius. It's a fun little weapon to use. You can just smack things in the face, and they die. Next up, we're going for the Inferno Force Staff, more commonly known as the Rift Haven. And for this, there is one thing I'm going to say with the stat spread. So even if you can't get a perfectly rolled weapon, the one thing you have to have above 76%, preferably 80, is burn. Okay? Because if you don't, you're not going to be putting the amount of stacks you need onto the target. Anything under 76 on burn is just don't use it. Sacrifice it to make a better staff. Okay? So even if damage, warp resistance, cloud radius, all of that isn't perfectly rolled, the one thing you have to look for is burn. Burn has to be above 76. Right. And again, Quell Speed is my dump stat because I don't care about it. Everything else is more useful. Perk-wise, we're going for increased crit and flak armored enemies. So flak is the most prevalent armor type in the game, so therefore doing more damage to flak is just better. And we're going for crit because when the Rift Haven staff crits, it doesn't increase the damage of the tick. It puts 2 ticks of damage on the enemy. So a crit is a double stack. So that is why we're stacking horrific amounts of crit in this build. Next up for the blessings, we're going with Penetrating Flame, lol. Direct to hits, apply 4 stacks of 1% brittleness for 5 seconds. Stacks 20 times. So, brittleness is just a debuff that applies rending to the target. So rending is what is applied to you. Brittleness is what you apply to the enemy. It's all the same thing, just with different names because Fat Shark. So now, this staff has a good way of dealing with armor by basically taking it away from them. And we're using Warp Nexus. Warp Nexus gain between 5% and 20% critical chance based on your current level of perils. We're always going to be running at quite high perils, so we're going to have a much larger crit chance. And we have taken away Warp Flurry, but you don't actually need to charge this staff to max. It doesn't do anything for the damage or the cloud, it just increases how long you're holding the staff out. So charging it to max, it just lets you stand there longer. Okay? So if you need to, just charge it a little bit, move on. Get a nice spray across the enemies. So yeah, don't think that you need to stand there and charge it up to full before you can do anything. And also remember, there is a small amount of leeway for when you hit 100% of perils. You don't instantly explode. Let's see if we can do it again. Now I'm talking about it, it won't work. There you go, you hit 100. And of course, I double charged, which means I used the ability twice. If you use it at the end there, you finish and stop. If you use it again, then you explode. But that's a perfect example of how Venting Shriek can save you. It was all my cunning plan all along. Right, talents, what are we using? We are using Soul Stealer, replenish 7.5% toughness on warp attack kill. Quietude, replenish 5% toughness for each 10% of perils quelled. Of course, we're using Perilous Combustion for more Soul Blaze stacks. Going down here for toughness, and then we're grabbing Brain Rupture and its subsidiaries. So Kinetic Resonance, using your combat ability, makes your Brain Rupture charge 75% faster and generate 50% less perils. So once you've Venting Shrieked, you can use Brain Burst a lot quicker. And of course, Kinetic Flare, all attacks against specials, elites, and monstrosities have a 10% chance on hit to Brain Rupture the target. This cannot occur while at critical perils and has a 15-second cooldown. So they've improved this massively by limiting what it can trigger on. It used to be able to trigger on goddamn anything, which means it might hit the Crusher, it might hit a Poxwalker. And now it's only elites, specials, and monstrosities, which makes it a lot better for us. As now we can't guarantee what it's going to hit, but we can guarantee the subclass it's going to hit. So even in a mixed horde, if there is a Tox Flamer and a Mauler and a million Poxwalkers, we know it's going to hit either the Tox Flamer or the Mauler. Right, next up, we're going for Wildfire. When an enemy dies while affected by your Soul Blaze, nearby enemies each gain up to 4 stacks of Soul Blaze. They cannot gain more stacks than the dying enemy had. Psychedelic's Aura decreases ability cooldown for you and allies' coherency by 5%. Toughness damage reduction. I've just realised I didn't show you the Curios. What am I like? Curios, sorry. We are using 3 toughness Curios. Don't look at that one, it's my shame. And they all have the exact same thing on them. Increased toughness, combat ability regeneration, and damage resistance gunners. Like I said in the last video, damage resistance gunners is very important. Actually, I say it in every goddamn one of my videos. Because gunners are the things that are going to tear you apart in Damnation and Damnation Aura. They do a lot of damage very quickly. So this is just going to help us survive along with Deflector. And back to the talents. We're taking toughness damage reduction here. Seer's Presence, 10% cooldown reduction abilities for you and your allies in coherency. Toughness damage reduction again. One with the Warp, gain toughness damage reduction of 10 to 33% based on your current perils. We're going to be riding the perils really high, so we're going to be near that 33% most of the time. Venting Shriek, unleash a wave of warp energy that staggers enemies in front of you and quells 50% perils. Becalming Eruption, Venting Shriek now decreases peril generation by 1% for each enemy hit, stacking 25 times, lasts 5 seconds. This isn't great, to be honest. This should have really been updated as well, but oh well. And Creeping Flames, Venting Shriek applies 1 to 6 stacks of Soul Blaze to the target hit based on your current perils. So what you can do is, if you want to be really dirty with it, you can stand there, block, suck up a load of damage, which will then be converted into perils because our blocking now goes to perils before it goes to stamina. And as you hit quite high on it, say 85 to 90% perils, you chuck it back at them. And we're doing that by using Kinetic Deflection. While below critical perils, blocking an attack causes your perils to increase instead of losing stamina. And that's how we can do that. And then we're coming down here for perils generation into Solidarity, increase quell speed by 30%. Again, why I'm not that bothered about quell speed on the weapon. Going down into toughness damage reduction again, into penetration of the soul, lol. 10% rending on warp attacks when above 75% perils. Again, rending basically works out to 1% rending is 1% damage. So it's basically around 10% damage, give or take a few decimal points. And then into toughness boost and warp siphon. So this is the OG keystone for the Psyker. Warp siphon. Killing an elite or special enemy gains you a warp charge for 25 seconds, stacking 4 times. Your next combat ability spends all available warp charges to reduce the cooldown of that combat ability by 7.5 seconds per warp charge. So this will allow us to use Venting Shriek a lot more often. Then we're going to be taking Essence Harvest. Replenish 30% toughness over 5 seconds on gaining warp charge. Gaining a new warp charge during the time resets. And I feel like I'm having a stroke. Hang on. Replenish 30% toughness over 5 seconds on gaining warp charge. Gaining a new warp charge, there we go, during this time resets the timer. Empyrean Empowerment increases all base damage by 4% for each warp charge. This thing's awesome. in Fiery Born. Killing an enemy with Soul Blaze has a 10% chance to grant you a warp charge. And then last but not least, Warp Battery. We now have 6 warp charges. So we have 6 charges, all giving us plus 4% damage. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. So we're getting 20% damage when we are fully warp charged. So we do have quite a lot of crit and damage baked into this build. And honestly, I've always been a big fan of the Rifthaven staff and the flame builds. They're just, I find them very relaxing. Oh, the screams, they relax me so much. And also it's really easy to use, which is most of the reason I use it. As you can see, you just kind of charge it a bit, let it rip, and you just decimate hordes. Shut up, Stephanie. But you don't want to be doing that all the time, obviously. If there's only 1 or 2 enemies, don't waste your breath or your perils. Charge up your sword and give them a whack. The Demius Force Sword is very, very powerful. And you can basically cut through anything. And also you spread Soul Blaze around by whatever you do. So, and as you can see down the bottom, we are at 6 warp charges, which means we're doing a lot more damage. It's not super crazy, stupid damage, but it is respectable. And also now we do have a way of dealing with armour with the Rifthaven staff, which was the biggest problem with it to start with. There we go. Lovely brain burst. And as you can see, using Venting Shriek while it's 6 warp charges, the cooldown is ridiculously quickly. Combine that with the Curios, with the combat ability regeneration on them, and the talents, we've got access to Venting Shriek a lot of the time, which is, not only is it our safety net for when we mess up, basically, and explode ourselves, it is a very powerful tool for spreading damage and also staggering everything. So if things are looking hairy or you're being overwhelmed by rages, you can give yourself a second to make some space and then get back in there. It's not the most exciting of abilities, you know, it's no goddamn telekinetic shield or Scryer's Gaze that makes you go crazy and kill everything, but it's incredibly useful. This build is very reminiscent of the original Psyker before all these new fancy trees came out. This is how it used to work. And don't forget your Blitz ability. So even though we get a free one every now and again on a target, it's still a very powerful tool for sniping things that are just out of your range. So if your team's being held down by snipers, grab his brain and give it a bursting. So our toolkit is very, very well rounded. We have a way of dealing with armor and melee and hordes. The Demius is no slouch when it comes to dealing with hordes. Hang on a minute, Brain Burst. You shouldn't be able to do that. You've turned me into a liar again. All attacks against... Oh, against specials, elites, and one-tron. No, wait, that doesn't make sense. I think they're lying to us. God damn you, fat shark. You've turned me into a liar. Anyway, the Force Sword. It's just very, very good at clearing out hordes. The Ilias is slightly better, but there's not much in it. And then, of course, we've got the Rifthaven staff for basically dealing with everything else. You know, you must learn, though, don't shoot until you see the whites of their eyes, because that's about as much range as you've got. And then we've got the Blitz ability for dealing with anything outside of that range. Remember, you can pre-charge it with the right mouse button. So you don't have to grab the target straight away. You can pre-charge it and then go, oh, hello. And then give them a smack. This is my preferred build for the Psyker. I really like it. It's very simple. It's very fun. And I hope you guys enjoy it. And if you do, please do like, subscribe, ring that bell for notifications. It really does help us out. And if you fancy it, check out the join button. Every little bit of support is really appreciated. So that's it for today. Hope you enjoy the build. I shall see you all next time. So until then, take it easy. See you later.